For years, officers Jason Harlow and Brent Connolly ruled their beat like tyrants. Every traffic stop they made was an ambush in disguise. Every complaint lodged against them mysteriously disappeared. They operated without consequence, their badges giving them a sense of invincibility. People feared them, respected them because they had no other choice. Those who spoke up against their abuse of power quickly learned that there was always a price to pay. They believed they were untouchable. That belief shattered on an ordinary afternoon, in an ordinary neighborhood, when they harassed the wrong person. An older woman walking her Labrador Retriever down a quiet street. She looked like anyone else in this sleepy suburb. Gray hair, gentle face, worn jeans, comfortable shoes. They figured she'd be easy to intimidate, just another name on a long list of nobodies they could rough up without fear of repercussions. They were wrong. When she didn't cower, when she questioned their authority with calm defiance, they escalated. Harsh words turned into threats. Threats became violence. And when her dog, sensing danger, took a step forward to protect her, Officer Harlow reached for his weapon. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that this woman wasn't who she appeared to be. Her name was Evelyn Shaw, a retired intelligence operative with nothing left to lose. And now, she was coming for them. The beginning of the end. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Juniper Lane. Its golden light filtered through the trees lining the sidewalks, dappling the pavement in soft, flickering patterns. It was the kind of day Evelyn cherished. Quiet. Simple. She strolled in sync with her Labrador, Max, whose broad head occasionally tilted as he flicked an ear toward distant sounds, a lawn mower humming, birds calling from the maple branches overhead. His leash hung slack in her hand, their movements as fluid as a dance long practiced. Evelyn inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp scent of freshly cut grass and sun-warmed earth. Moments like this were rare, especially for someone who had spent most of her life in far-flung places under false names, orchestrating missions most people could never imagine. She'd spent the better part of her life living on the razor's edge. Now she wanted quiet, peace, normalcy. But she knew better than to trust in those things. Even here, in this manicured suburb, she felt the undercurrents. A car idling too long at an intersection. A figure standing in an upstairs window, watching. Joggers who veered away at the last second rather than share the sidewalk. She'd lived too long in the shadows to ignore them. Max's pace slowed ever so slightly. His hackles weren't raised, but his head lowered a fraction, his nose working the air. Evelyn's hand automatically shifted on the leash, loosening in case she needed to drop it. A police cruiser turned onto the street ahead of her. Black and white, the reflection of sunlight off polished metal. A sight most people would feel comforted by. Evelyn, she felt the first stirrings of unease tighten her gut. Max gave a soft growl, one she felt through the leash more than heard. Easy, she murmured. He settled, but didn't relax. The cruiser slowed as it approached. It matched her pace for a moment before the driver's side window slid down with a mechanical hum. "Afternoon, ma'am," came a voice. She stopped, turned, slowly. Her expression was neutral, her body language open, non-threatening. Not because she was afraid, because she understood control. "Afternoon, officers," she replied, her tone polite but firm. Officer Jason Harlow was behind the wheel. Late 30s, stocky, with a thick neck and small, hard eyes. He wore mirrored sunglasses that hid his gaze but not his intent. His partner, Brent Connolly, was already stepping out of the vehicle, heavy boots grinding against pavement as he positioned himself just off to her right. Close enough to loom, far enough to deny intimidation. Evelyn's stomach clenched, but her expression never shifted. "You live around here?" Harlow asked, his tone conversational in the way a snake's hiss might be described as musical. "Yes, sir," Evelyn answered. "No hesitation, no emotion." Harlow's lips tugged into a smirk. "That's so? Don't think I've seen you before." She nodded mildly. "I've been away. Just got back from overseas. Security consulting." Connolly let out a snort. That's some fancy name for mercenary? She smiled politely. Private security for high-risk environments. I help train teams on crisis response and threat assessment. Harlow tilted his head, studying her like a butcher weighing a side of beef. We got a call, he said after a moment. Someone reported suspicious activity in the area. Figured we'd check it out. Suspicious, Evelyn repeated softly. I wasn't aware that walking my dog qualified. You'd be surprised, Connolly said, stepping closer. His gaze dropped to Max. That's a big dog. He trained. Yes, sir. Trained for what? Evelyn let the question hang there for a beat. Obedience. Protection. He's disciplined. She saw the flicker of something in Harlow's expression. He wasn't interested in her answers. He was testing her. We're going to need to see some ID, Harlow said. It wasn't a request. Evelyn had options. She could question their legal right to demand identification without cause. She could refuse. Stand her ground. But she recognized men like these. She'd spent years reading threats before they bloomed into violence. Of course, she said, calm as ever. She reached slowly for her wallet, moving with practiced deliberation. Max's body stiffened. Harlow's hand twitched near his belt. Connolly's jaw tightened. Keep that dog in check, he warned. Max is fine, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady. Her hand paused on her jacket zipper. Harlow chuckled, low and cold. We'll see about that. The tension snapped like a live wire. Harlow's hand shot toward his gun. Max launched. The big dog became a missile of muscle and teeth. Evelyn moved in the same instant, instinct overriding thought. She dropped the leash and pivoted. Max hit Harlow square in the chest, his jaws locking around the man's forearm, dragging the weapon wide as it cleared the holster. Harlow screamed. The shot went wild, punching harmlessly into the sky. Connolly swore and went for his sidearm. Evelyn was already moving. She kicked the fallen weapon out of reach, sending it skittering onto the cruiser. Max out, she barked. The dog obeyed instantly, releasing Harlow's arm and retreating to Evelyn's side. His growl was still low and dangerous. Harlow clutched his bleeding limb, eyes blazing with hate. You're dead, he spat. Connolly's gun was halfway drawn when Evelyn shifted her stance, her fingers hovering near the Karam bit at her hip. Her voice was silk over steel. Don't, she said. Not unless you want to see what happens next. Silence stretched, taut as a tripwire. Connolly froze. Then, with a curse, he let his hand fall away from his weapon. This isn't over, he hissed. Evelyn smiled, slow and cold. Oh, I know. She didn't turn her back as she backed away, Max glued to her side. She watched them until she was sure they weren't going to make another move. Only then did she walk away, pulse steady, mind already working through the next steps. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The hunt begins. The story doesn't end there. What happens next is a game Evelyn knows too well. A game of shadows and subtle moves. And this time, she's not limited by rules or bureaucracy. Harlow and Connolly don't know who they've provoked. They don't know she spent her life dismantling regimes and eliminating threats before they even knew they existed. They think they can bury what happened on that street. They think they can twist the truth. But Evelyn has no intention of letting them. They'll come for her, thinking they can silence her before she makes noise. They'll use every tool in their dirty playbook. False reports, planted evidence, late-night visitors. Evelyn is ready. She's been waiting for a fight like this. And justice, when it comes, will be swift and painful.